Greetings from Will Forum India, from the snowy mountains of Sattal on a cold winter day. When we are opening our account for the year 2021, I want to welcome Harita Gupta, who is the chair of our Will Executive Advisory Board. And today we're going to do an interview with Harita. She's the country head of Sutherland. She's also a country head for India. She's also the global head for enterprise business solutions at Sutherland. So would you be able to give us a couple of lines, maybe 3 or 4, on how you would want to introduce yourself to our community and stakeholders?
My name is Harita Gupta. Grew up pretty much all over India and part of my life in Africa because my father was in the army. So, it was almost every 2 to 3 years we were moving from one place to another. And I think that really got, let me say, it got me to adjust much better to different kinds of situations that I've encountered through my career. I've been working for a long time. Yes, passed out of IIT Delhi, joined a software company called NIIT Technologies, worked there for 25 years, then moved on to Microsoft. I worked there for another 6 years. And over the last 4 years, I've been working at Sutherland. I head the global business as well as head the India country.
The first thing that I would like to ask you is about what I call the next phase. And as I always say, in the last 10 months or 11 months, we have gone through ascension. What do you see as the next phase for women in leadership? How far are we going to get? Not how far we have come, because that's backseat driving. How far do you think we're going to get?
I think the workplace domain is changing at a much faster pace than we ever thought about. And you could say, fortunately, I think COVID has brought a huge change and acceleration in the whole concept of what is a workplace, especially in countries like India. There are also some macro factors across the world which are, I believe, going to have a long-term impact. For example, governments across the world are looking at how diversity needs to be on the boards of companies. In fact, very interestingly, Goldman Sachs earlier this year, I believe it was in February, mandated a board diversity movement. And in fact, David Solomon, the CEO, said that his investment bank would not help companies go public without at least one diverse member. Now, this had very polarized opinions on Twitter, but I believe that this is going to have a long-term impact on how we really need to land diversity on boards. There are a couple of studies which say that over the last couple of years, companies with at least one female director have done better than those completely without. And at the end of it, with all these factors playing, I believe that diversity and women leadership has just begun.
So you're saying that it has just begun, but the question is, we need to move fast, not because it's a nice thing to do, but we need to move fast because it is important for business and for innovation. So what do you think about the speed and what do you think about the pace?
Poonam, and I was looking at some data in my company. When we hire, graduates at entry level, our diversity ratio is 41% to 45%. So it's a very healthy ratio.
Yes.
But the minute we get to an AVP or a VP or a senior VP level, it falls to the teens and sometimes, less than 10%. And what that tells me is that at the end of the day, there is no performance gap when it comes, in a gender, because you hired everybody and your entry level criteria was the same. It's an opportunity gap, and the responsibility is with somebody like me as a leader to see how can I bridge that opportunity gap much faster? How do I increase that pace to bridge the opportunity gap? To increase the pace, I believe you need to give an equal chance and a level playing field to everyone. Uh, and if you do, just by natural forces, you will be a balanced and an inclusive organization. And I was looking again at some data where, you know, pre-COVID, we had 70% of women leave us post a childbirth, during maternity and post childbirth. But now with, let me say, post COVID and the digital era, that number has come down to less than 30%. In fact, today it's trending around 20%. And I believe that, that's the pace. In a way, that's been a blessing, and that's going to, increase the pace. But but we can also only do that when we fix the leaking pipe,
Mhm.
sensitize men, and also get women to understand that fear of failure is not bad. And so, how do we change organization culture?
Mhm.
I think that's the responsibility we would carry at will, Poonam. And let's hope that together we can make that difference.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, we are the data and we are the culture. So all we need to do is we got to embed more people like you. You're the
Yeah.
data and you're the culture. I always begin with ourselves and I never look at anybody else because I can't control anyone else. But I can
True.
say that if we have people like Harita and if she can do this, which is, and I think you've coined a very nice word, which is called opportunity gap. I always said equal opportunity, and I always said that there is a gap, but now you put the two together and you say opportunity gap. Very
Mm.
nice. I'm reminded of one of the quotations that
Mm.
talent is universal and opportunity is not. And nobody
Yeah.
less than our most excellent front runner, Hillary Clinton, said it in a very long speech. But the question is who's listening? So we're listening for sure. So the question then to somebody like you who is, on the digital cutting edge, will digital close the gender gap, the opportunity gap? What is your thinking?
So if you look at definition of digital, and move away from automation,
Hmm.
uh, in my mind, from a culture perspective, the first thing that resonates with me is equal opportunity, because I'm not dependent on perception, I'm not dependent on feelings, I'm dependent a lot on data, I'm dependent a lot on tools, and those tools available to anybody will help them perform.
Hmm.
And I mean, I'll give you a simple example. When we earlier this year, we had to move almost 18,000 people to work from home, right? And we use digital very, very effectively. In fact, we built our own tools to be able to monitor. So, for example, I could have a monitoring system to understand what is Poonam doing, how is she working, is there something I can help her with. In fact, some of the women members on my team put together an ideathon idea. So we ran what's called an ideathon, right? Which is that, hey, give us ideas on what we can do better.
Hmm.
And they came up with a very interesting concept. How do you take the emotional quotient of anybody working at home, and how do you leverage that to understand how can I make Poonam more efficient? How can I help her do better?
Hmm.
That is digital. So digital has no biases. And I think the minute you remove the bias, you automatically have a level playing field for a woman at home who has children and family versus a man, who would like to get out of the house and get to the office. So I think it creates a level playing field.
So we wrote the report about 3 years ago, a Will report, which is called Women, Workplace, and the Web. And
Right.
it wasn't so much about the fact that you could work from the house and be more flexible, but does it
Right.
close the leadership gap? That is my
Hmm.
question. Making the women anonymous in terms of gender, giving them more flexibility, yeah. But will it close the leadership gap? Just what is your intuitive thinking?
I believe that this culture of inclusion and diversity starts at the top. And CEOs and chairmen of companies have to set the example themselves. And it's very critical to building trust in the organization, encouraging alignment, and of course, fostering pride. Let me give you an example. I was in Chennai last week and I was reviewing, some of our large programs. And when I'm sitting in this room reviewing it, I'm of course, the only woman in the room, but I also have the teams with their entire leadership team with only men. And I think earlier I would have been hesitant to call it out. But as a leader, I believe that if you don't call it out, you're not doing anyone a favor. So I did call it out, and the solution on how to, take care of women in leadership roles came from the team. They said, "Hey," I said, "what can you do?" Because they said, "Oh, we can't hire from the market. There aren't ready women who are willing to join us, and all the good reasons."
Yeah.
So what we agreed with my HR leader, Renu, is that we would run a program where all my AVPs and senior directors would choose one or two candidates, female candidates, who they would mentor and be accountable for to grow. To be honest, I'm here because somebody in NIT and Microsoft and now in Sutherland decided that yes, they would mentor me, coach me because I'm not perfect, but yet they did that and spent that time. So, Poonam, I think what's happening today is everybody is very busy. And do I really spend time to make the change? That's important. And that can only be driven from the top.
Well, it will be driven when they see that it's called profits, and when they see it's called revenue, and when they see it's called business. That's
Yes.
when they're going to do it, not when you or I are going to say it. So, I remain completely baffled all the time why they don't see the connection. And, I think that this has led us to the redefinition of a CEO's role in this next phase. Purpose will become a very important part of the CEO's role. Will it just be profits? Will it just be business? Or will it just be revenue? Or will it be social impact? Will the role of the CEO also be compassion? Will the role of the CEO also be sustainability? And how seriously will the CEO really blend this into their existing role?
What I have found is that initially, right, with all the, I would not call it resistance, but I would call it barriers, right? I think women with their DNA are able to handle not only the functional competencies, but also the empathy element, right? And at the end of the day, produce results which are done in the right manner. Let me put it like that. And when those results show, confidence builds, and success breeds success, and that's how I see it, at least in Sutherland, and with what I have done in the past.
So what will it take to put it on top of the CEO's agenda? Say the top 5 of the CEOs. It doesn't have to be on top. What will it take? Sutherland has done a great job. You've done a great job. Other companies have done a great job, but 90% have not. All right. That's why 85% of board seats are still occupied by men. How do we put it on their desktop? Or that is why 80% of CXO positions are still occupied by men. It's not a question of how many are occupied by women. It's a question of how many are not. How do we put it on top of their agenda? How did Sutherland get it on top of their agenda? What is your thinking?
I think early in the careers, we've got to identify the high potential women, right? Just like you do for high potential men. And once you've got your high potential team, it's important to invest, Poonam.
Yes.
And investment just doesn't mean sending me for a training program or reporting statistics saying we sent 100 people for mentoring. That's not investment. I think investment comes when you really believe that you're going to drive the change. It comes through a lot of top-down communication. It comes through a lot of, I would say, lead by example. I think to drive that, it's like change management that you would do, to drive any change. It's
Good.
about communication. It's about getting the buy-in. Yeah.
Getting the buy-in from?
I think getting the buy-in first at a board level. I think the CEO himself or herself should believe that they want to drive this. And you could do it in two ways. You could go the Goldman Sachs way, saying, look, we are not going to help any company which doesn't have a woman, which is one way of doing it. And the other way of doing it is to have success stories around women who've actually led successful companies and countries. So I was reading a very interesting WhatsApp message which said that, countries which had women leaders had low COVID cases compared to the rest. Now, that could be just a myth, right? But it's interesting that people are thinking of those data points.
Yes, I certainly hope it does not take a pandemic for people to change their minds. It would be a zero-sum game.
Yes.
The mindsets are made of your experiences, your exposure, and
Yes.
your learning. And I think if we could change the experience and the exposure and the learning of mindsets of CEOs, we will have more CEOs like yourself. For me, the exposure is key, which is why we started the Will Forum, so that we don't recycle the same things that everybody else is saying, but we give them exposure to something that is different, to experiences that are different. And so, I don't talk much about the women because I think a lot has been said about them. I think that we need to talk more about the ecosystem. Since you are the CEO, it's in your hands to do that. So, like I said, I hope we will see more CEOs like yourself. And, I hope that people do not put people like you in a bucket, which is called women in tech. I think that women like yourself need to be privileged to be put in buckets of women CEOs. And I don't think it's CEO. I think the more we say women CEOs, the better it sounds. So I just want to ask you, women and tech and women in tech. I want to be very sure that we're talking about women and tech, not so much women in tech. Guide us, please, Harita.
So there is women in tech. So I started as a woman in technology. But today, when I look at a lot of my colleagues, in fact, yesterday I had two very interesting a presentation from two women who are part of my compliance team. So they're chartered accountants, and they were talking about technology, which impressed me, which is that they don't need to have studied technology. Digital and technology is for everybody today. And so I think our mindset, which is that there is, you have to be either women in technology or either you fit or you don't fit. I think that mindset has changed. If you look at the younger people today, it is literally women and technology. And, live examples I see every day. What I think is important is you've got to listen to them. Because if you don't listen to your teams and your people, you really don't know what is their capability. So sometimes we get caught up in our numbers and financial results and profits and EBITDA. I think it's important to listen to people. And once you listen to them, you will understand what can drive the change.
So how much time do you really spend listening to the people, as you put it? What do you think?
I spend a lot of time, Poonam. There are different channels I adopt. Last 2 days, I've spent 4 hours on each day listening to ideas, from my teams across. I also have on our intranet, we have an Ask Harita link, and you can go and post any question. And I typically get something like 40 to 50 questions a week, which I look at, I respond. And it's very interesting that people now have the confidence to ask me anything. And I think that's wonderful because the minute you have open communication with your people, then you can confidently drive change.
This is going to be my punchline. Ask Harita, press the button. Let's you where that goes. That's a
Yeah.
great punchline. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have it, but who's answering on the other side? But you're telling us online that you actually answer yourself. I think it would be great. Do you have a smiley or something or an icon, ask Harita, or what?
It's just a link, but I'm not going to take credit for it. It was my communications team, and they said, why don't you do this? And I thought maybe it's a good idea. And now, in hindsight, I think it's been great.
Well, you have to take the credit for answering. It's not about the link. You can set
Yeah.
up a link. The question is, are you ready to answer on the other side? And now we all know why we have Harita Gupta as the chair of the Executive Advisory Board. As I said in the beginning, no matter what you do, at the end of the day, when we talk to Harita Gupta, she shows us how the blend takes place. And I'm an economist and I like fortitude, I like knowledge, I like rigor, but she blends it marvelously with empathy. And now we can always ask Harita. Thank you very much, Harita, for joining us. Do you have any more last closing words to the women, the men, the CEOs, the communities?
Before you sleep every day and wake up in the morning, I've been very blessed for all the men and the women I've had in my life. And whatever I can do, Poonam, to help this cause, I'm absolutely committed. And I'm really happy to be part of the Will Forum. Thank you, Poonam.
Thank you. Enjoy your winter. Lovely to
Thank you,
see you.
Poonam. Lovely to see you as well.